Hello, everybody, and we are back a little bit late because Super Mario Odyssey came out. I've been sick, work's been picking up, house stuff, whole bunch of reasons you don't care about, but who cares about them either? As I don't, because we're here now, and we have the Horsehead Weekly, week number 9. We got the Smiling Horse down in the corner. Everyone's excited, everyone's ready to go. So let's get started with last week's recap, where I won again. Wow, man, it's been rough for me. But I mean, I finally think I have a really good team. I got Pierre Garcon, just got Jimmy Garoppolo. I got Watson still popping off even against a good defense, so he's going to be good for probably 30 points a week at this point. Like how crazy is that? So my team is just going to be absolutely stacked from here on out. I only put up 115 this week, but I think moving forward, my team's just going to get better and better and better. Um, Looking at everybody else, we also have Matt M continuing his streak as of late, beating out Matt S. Jess again putting up good numbers last week. So she's looking like maybe she's starting to get something together. Still wasn't good enough though because she had run into Jerry, who put up the top number of the week. I believe she was third or fourth for the week. Oh, Jerry was second. She was fourth. Tough luck for Jess. In other matches, we have Nick falling to James, Doug and Dave both fighting, and Doug's narrowly getting a win out, and Tyler and Malcolm. Tyler retaining or maintaining his good looks, goodness, good everything he's got going on with him, taking out Malcolm 6-2 and going up to 6-2 and setting the pace with Doug. In the standings, hey, look at that segue. I'm getting good at this. So we got Doug leading in the AFC is what I'm calling them, and we have on the NFC Tyler. But this isn't. This is just a bunch of nonsense. Who cares about that? This is how it's better structured. The playoff standings right now out of the AFC, we have Doug and James being the two winning the division, with Jerry taking the wild card, with Malcolm, myself, and Matt S all trailing. Malcolm 1 game back, Matt S and myself 2 games back. And then over in the NFC, we have Tyler with the bye. We have Matt M being the other division guy, with Mike taking the wild card at 4-4, with Nick and Jess 1 game behind, and Dave 2 games out. Which, with 5 games left to go, still a ton that can happen. It's looking harder and harder for Dave to win the division because of how well his brother's doing, but at the same time, it could happen, and he's still only 2 games back of winning the wild card. So everyone is still very much in it. Some people don't necessarily control their own destiny at this point, but everyone is definitely very much so still in it. With it looking like sitting around 500 is probably going to be good enough in the NFC to make the wild card, so maybe a 7-6 record. Which sadly for Dave means he does have to win out. But hey, if things break the wrong way for a couple people, maybe he can get in at 6-7. And over in the AFC, we have Jerry at 5-3, but so maybe you're looking more at a 7-6. Maybe you even need 8 wins. Um, Depending on how things go, who really knows? To get the wild card for myself, and then in the other division 4-4. So maybe again that 7-6 or 6-7 record might be what you need. So moving on now to the Eliminator, and we had 2 eliminations this week. The Eliminator's just been claiming lives left and right. It literally has taken up 6 people in 3 weeks, and it looks like it can take out 2 more next week. So this week we say goodbye though to Nick and James. They fought hard and they still didn't make it out alive. Best of luck to you guys next year. You join the ranks of 8 others who have fallen before you. Matt S gets his second strike as the only person getting a strike last week, and Doug continues to sit at 2 strikes, which he's been at for a while. And then Tyler and Jerry both sit at only 1 strike, which means at this point we are down to 2 strikes for next week, which means it's possible that we go down to everyone having 2 strikes. If that happens, I'll probably ask in chat, hey chat, what do you guys think of us moving it down to 1 strike apiece moving forward? Because I think that could make it really, really tight moving forward. But if it goes down to 2 strike, but we do need at least one more week of two strikes to be able to finish on time. Um, Not on time, but by the end of the regular season, which is what I'm kind of looking for. So yeah, so if you guys think that maybe you want to knock it down to one strike now, it's a minimum of 5 weeks is would be left, so 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Actually, I might just bring that up in chat. Okay, how about this? If you're watching this video, start a discussion in chat because I'm not feeling well and I'm probably not going to want to get involved in that kind of nonsense right now. And just be like, hey, everybody, what do you think of moving down to one strike so that way we're done at week 13? I know it's kind of bad for Nick and James, but they had because they played in the three strikes and that's kind of how we had it set up. If you want to keep it the way that it is, that's fine. I'm cool with that. But I think it might be neat to knock it down to one strike and really stretch out these last three people. But who cares about that? I do. Everyone else does. So talk about it. But let's get into incentives because that is another money-making option. Um, just to recap, there are 10 incentives. They're $5 a piece. It's not much, but it's cute. It makes you pick up a couple bucks here and there. It's a good time. So let's look at QBs and RBs. Doug continues to run away with it. I mean, he's about a week ahead of everybody else in points with 24 points ahead of James and 35 ahead of Jess. He's just hit really, really well with his quarterbacks this year. He started off very strong, and then he picked up Watson, which made him even better. And then he switched over to Russell Wilson, who he still has. So he's just doing a great job right now. James and Jess are definitely catching up. If can catch up rather, if they start, their quarterbacks start putting in some good weeks. But at this point, it looks like Doug definitely has one of the better, if not the best, quarterbacks in the league right now. Russell Wilson just always looks good in the second half of the year. Moving over to running backs, no surprise, Tyler is at the top, zero point 0.1 points behind getting to 300 points, which is a little rough. But when he looks back and he sees a 38-point gap between him and Matt S. and a 60-point gap from him to Malcolm, he can't really be that upset. He's definitely looking like he's got the powerhouse. I mean, he has 3 top 8 running backs. And I'm going to say, you're going to hear this a lot when I'm talking chat and I'm talking about trades with you guys over the next week. I think there are 8 solid RB1s in the league this year. And that's it. There's just 8 of them. And after this week with Zeke getting taken out, I think that falls down to 7. But I think that there's only 8 people that I can look at and say, this is a guy who I can just put in my lineup and forget about him. He's matchup proof. He's going to get me points every single week. And he's going to put up really big numbers when he has a good matchup. And I'm expecting double-digit points week in, week out from these people. Tyler's got 3 of them. So I think it's going to be hard to match him in this race. I think it's basically his. But it will be interesting to see if maybe a couple other people might be able to catch up before the end of the season. Moving on, we have wide receivers and tight ends. With wide receivers, Jerry, he has Hopkins, who's been just putting up monster points all season. And then he's been playing some other people as well. I'm not entirely sure what he has, but he's got about a week, maybe not a full week, but he's got a pretty good margin, maybe like 3/4 of a week, with a 31-point gap between him and Mike and myself. A lot of that coming from last week where he put up that 30-point difference between what he put up and everyone else put up. I mean, it was just Hopkins went off, and he had somebody else who did very well. So, good for him, but that could flip again. I mean, that could flip right back. I could have a week where my wide receivers pop off and his falter. So, we'll see what happens there. Tight end, we have, a two-way race still with Tyler and Matt M. Tyler getting a little bit of ground. And then looking over to IDPs, we have James, Jerry, and Matt S. all fighting with James about a week ahead of the other two. At linebackers, we have Jerry and Dave M. about a week ahead of Nick. And then at defensive back, we have Jerry about half a week ahead of Nick. And, he's got a bunch of people right behind him there, too. So as I said, it's just It's $5. It's over the course of 10 incentives, including the other three, which I'd never even talk about because I'll figure them out later. But that's what we have so far with this. So good luck to everybody with those. And let's move on to the waiver wire for this week. And this week on the waiver wire, I wanted to focus on three people because feel like there's only three like big money guys that people went after. With Tyler Lockett, I think he was a really solid pickup by Malcolm. $5 is, it's not big money, but I think it was a very important pickup. James dropping $30 on Kenyon Drake, which is only $5 ahead of Jerry, which is good. That's kind of the range you want to be in when you're bidding that high. As a Miami Dolphins fan, I think Drake is definitely going to be the guy. They're going to run a running back by committee this week, but I think it's going to be Drake that emerges as the better person, with Williams maybe playing more of like that Darren Sproles type of guy where if Miami gets behind, they maybe leave him on the field a little bit more if they're running like a 2-minute drill or something to get passes and stuff. But Drake is definitely going to be the between the tackles guy, and with them bringing back their guard that just got off of IR, I think Miami's offensive line is going to look a lot better than it did before. And I think these people, Drake and Williams, they wouldn't be given the option right now of starting, and they wouldn't have traded away Jay Ajayi for the price that they did if they didn't think they had somebody behind him that could step up. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to run this running back by committee this week. But is it just going to be a timeshare for the rest of the season, or are they just trying to figure out who's the guy we can go to as an ever down back? So we'll see how that goes. Fab remaining. Jerry tried to break the bank this week, dropping 25 on Drake. He ended up missing out, so he still is the big fancy man at $57. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have Matt M. and Nick, both as the poor, guys walking around with like their hat out saying, "Can I have this guy for $0? Can I have this guy for $0?" I don't know why they're sitting with $1. Maybe if they see somebody who they really like and they don't think anyone else is. I have questions about the dollar thing, but we'll see what happens with that. And now on to the rest of season rankings. But it's not the power rankings. Those are different. What I'm talking about is how you rank rest of season. So we're going to start off with who people play. And you have your names here with your sorted by the last 3 games, how many points you scored on average. Okay, so it's not sorted by that. It's just names. But you have your names, wins, last 3 points, and then who you play your last 5 weeks. Who are your opponents? So just, there's clearly some errors in there because apparently Mike M is just playing 2 different people next week. That's wrong. But hey, this is a good little cheat sheet if you just want to check it out and be like, who do I think I play? But that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Let's look at it by the numbers, and the numbers are points against. So like for myself, I play 2 people who were averaging over 125. And I actually have the worst schedule. This is actually sorted by average opponent points per game. So my average opponent is going to put up 118.8 points per game. And that's dragged down a little bit by who I play in week 10, who I believe is Dave. No offense, Dave, but your team is putting up a lot of points last 3 weeks. So that's going to be a really tough schedule for me because I have to basically slog through a bunch of very tough opponents. Where on the other end, we have Matt M, whose best opponent going forward over the last couple weeks, how much points they put up, is 109. They don't play a single person who's put up more than 110 points. So it's entirely possible that Matt M could just kind of roll through into the playoffs. He has a super favorable schedule, as does Tyler, as does Jerry. Now, part of that is, of course, because they score a lot of points themselves. And if you score a lot of points yourself, then you're not going to have to play somebody who scores those points. For somebody like me who doesn't score that many points, that means I'm definitely playing against other people who score a lot of points. C'est la vie. So that's how it looks for points against, and this is how it looks for wins. So the average opponent for Nick has 5 wins, basically, versus Matt M, who only has 3. So this is if you want to look at it more of like maybe a management type of thing, like how are people playing the game? Like how well are people managing their teams? How well are people, handling themselves? Because the last 3 points isn't necessarily the best metric because some people are making trades, making ad drops. So I think this is also pretty good. I feel kind of bad for Nick. Those next 3 weeks are going to be absolutely just terrible for him. He's got to play three people who are well above 500. Um, I also have a tough schedule with only one person below 500. But yeah, you can take a look at this, see how you're doing. And then another little cute thing I decided to do because remember that time I mentioned earlier how great my team was? Well, as you can see here, it's not as great as I thought. Um, so I decided to make an fantasy all IR team where we basically put down how everybody, how everybody's team's doing based on people who have been out a extended period of time. Um, they may come back from their IR. They might do something. Who really knows? But this is what I came up with. So you have Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Luck, and Palmer as your top four quarterbacks. Also, you're going to see different colored highlights. I am in yellow. You can see my five guys, with Eifert kind of being a mix of myself and also Malcolm. You have pink for Nick's two players, and then you have Malcolm's three players. So really, Malcolm and myself have both had pretty bad luck this season. He lost his tight end, another tight end, a wide receiver, and a fantastic IDP player. I lost my quarterback, running back, two wide receivers, and a tight end. And Nick didn't really lose his quarterback because he picked up luck really late. But I thought it was worth mentioning because this is an all fantasy IR team. So if everyone was healthy and they played a full season, these are the people I thought would perform the best of the people who are on IR. Um, so yeah, this is just so as I said who the quarterbacks are. Let's move on to running backs. Dalvin Cook, who is having a phenomenal season. Carson out in not San Diego, Seattle. He was having a great season. Johnson, the number one overall pick. Danny Woodhead and Spencer Ware, both of those guys being out as well. I think that makes up a super solid running back group. Moving over to wide receiver, OBJ and AR-15. I mean, those are two of just the absolute top people. They're definitely upper echelon guys. They were first round draft picks last season. Both of them were unable to really do much this year due to injuries. Edelman, he didn't even get drafted. He was out too soon. He's another absolutely phenomenal player. And then Pierre Garçon, who was about to get Jimmy Garoppolo as quarterback, probably was going to start blowing up in a couple weeks and put up together a really good end of the season. But I'd rather him be healthy and get his neck taken care of than have to worry about anything else. And then at tight end, Greg Olsen and Tyler Eifert were both people who were supposed to be very great, consistent tight ends. They both went down very early in the season. Fedorowicz, who's another person who a lot of people were like, oh, he could be good. We'll see what happens with him. On top of the fact that, Watson was being as great as he was. If you had Watson on that team and Fedorowicz as a tight end with Fuller and Hopkins, I think that's a Super Bowl winning team. You just send the two wide receivers out to do stuff, and then he could just check down Fedorowicz whenever. That would have been a really great team. And then Clay and Reed for Mac and Jess. They were both putting up like 13 points per game when they're healthy, but they both have been out so many weeks. I had to add them to the all IR team, even though they're not on IR. And then for the IDPs, Olivier Vernon, as well as Barry and Watt, just three people who are all super good at their position and just kind of, they got hurt and weren't able to live up to expectations. So this is a fantasy all IR team. If you went up to me like middle of July and you said, I'll give you a team, it will consist of these players with these, and then if they had an average, you'd say, oh, they also would have this average points per week. I'd be like, give me that team, and it would end up horribly. So this is just basically the all fantasy IR team. I think it was cute. And now we move on to the actual rankings. This week's power rankings are the Batman Villain Edition, and we're starting off with the bottom class of the Calendar Man class. That's right. Batman has a villain called Calendar Man, where his whole superpower and all of his stuff is based around the fact that calendars exist. And, like, days of the week are cool. I don't think he has any powers. I think he just wears a cape made of like the day things that you like rip off every day. He's weird. Moving on, and we have me. Um, womp womp. For a number of reasons, I lost a starting flex position player with Garzon. I lost the number one quarterback in the league at Watson. So that was bad. I had to make some trades that weren't great to try to fix up my team as best I could. But hey, we're here. I'm doing my best. Hopefully, maybe I can turn this bus around. Maybe I can make this work for me. Maybe I can make a heroic comeback. I won last week, so who knows? Let's see what happens. We also have Dave here, number 11, who did not move this week. Dave's team is continuing to put up subpar numbers, but I feel like if there is ever a week for him and his New Orleans stack to really go off, it's going to be against Tampa Bay. They've kind of just looked dreadful this year. So I'm expecting him to have a very good week this week and maybe pick up his third win in order to stay within possibility of getting a 7-6 record, which should get a playoff spot in his conference. Not a lot to say about his team. He's definitely been making some really good moves. Like he picked up Luke Kuechly. He's really trying to figure out, some good stuff to do with his team. If Peterson's the real deal and Kamara ends up winning the job in New Orleans, he could be good. But he also has things like Will Fuller on his team. C.J. Anderson's look kind of bad. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how his team shakes out moving forward. I think he still has a possibility to put on a run and make his team good, but at this point, it's gonna be kind of rough. But he's definitely a guy who I think still has a shot. At number 10, we have Jess. Jess moved up in the rankings because I moved down in the rankings, and she had a couple players like Jordan Reed might be playing again soon. So I figured that was probably worth it. Demaryius Thomas is getting a new quarterback, so I thought, ooh, maybe that could be interesting. Marshawn Lynch, as long as he doesn't punch a referee again, probably going to do some good things. Cooper's looking like he's starting to come around. Freeman's hurt, so if he ends up being out any extended period of time, Coleman's good. Blount, of course, is terrible because I don't think that's going to end up working out well, but I don't know. I feel like her team is starting to put up better points. It's starting to look better. She naturally has to move Brady out, hopefully, before tomorrow. She'll do that by 1 o'clock so she can actually start a quarterback. But, yeah. And she has Alfred Morris, too. Yeah, her team, I think her team is definitely going to get a lot better. I'm really interested to see what her team ends up doing. And just a quick tip to Jess. I don't know who you're playing this week, so sorry whoever your opponent is. But I've been watching a lot of Cincinnati games because I owned a bunch of them, and they do not have a good team in regards to offensive line play. They've been giving up a ton of sacks and stuff, and they like to run the ball with Mixon right now because he keeps complaining. They keep giving him the ball more and more. I think Calais Campbell's the start here over Clowney. I don't know if you picked him up this week or if he was just in from last week when you subbed out Campbell because he was on a bye. Plus, I think their team also just traded for somebody from Buffalo, one of their defensive linemen or something. So they're going to have to watch that guy as well. I think Campbell's the start here over Clowney, just as a tip. But hey, do whatever you want to do. It's you. So that's it for the bottom three. I think that's a very clear distinction in the tiers between the C class and the B class. And in the B class, we have Hush, who is one of my personal favorites. He's absolutely phenomenal. If you've never read Hush, the comic, you should. It's good. But anyways, in the Hush class, which is like, dark horses and stuff, we find Malcolm. He slid back a slot last week because Ezekiel Elliott is getting his suspension put back in, probably. Right. Anyways, but Josh Gordon's coming back, so I mean that's cool. If Eddie Lacy ends up becoming the starter, then that's a guy you own. I'm not trusting him still. But I think your team still is good, not great, needs some work. Uh, I mean, you kind of need like Clay to come back, Zeke to win his suspension appeal, and Cam to really start being Cam again. And you have a really good team. I mean, you do already have two starting quality running backs in Aaron Jones and Christian McCaffrey. I think they're both very good. I think Tyler Lockett's going to pay some dividends, and you have Keenan Allen to put in when he's not on a bye. Um, I think your team's final form is definitely coming, and I think it's going to be really interesting to watch you moving forward, how you're going to look for that. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think you have a good team. It's just with the Zeke suspension thing and a couple other and like Clay being out. I don't know. You just it's you make me nervous, Mac. You make me nervous. I'm gonna move on to Nick. Looking at your team is making me nervous. Uh, and we have Nick. Um, I like Nick's team. I'm definitely gonna go that far. He has a lot of players who could be really good. Like Rod Smith could come out of nowhere if Morris stumbles in a couple weeks, and he could end up being the guy. Galladay coming back healthy could be a thing. If they end up getting an offensive line in Washington, you have a good guy there. You have a starting wide receiver in Sterling Shepard. I mean, you have a lot of very good players on your team, and I'm just looking at the players on your bench right now. Looking at your starters, I mean, they're again very good players. You have two great wide receivers in Mike Evans, who's a top 5 guy, and Doug Baldwin, who I think is a wide receiver 1 this year. Moving forward, the issue is the next couple of weeks, as well as last week, he's going to have a good corner. I believe he's got Norman this week against Washington, and then the week after he has Patrick Peterson. So you're going to have 2 tough weeks with Doug Baldwin, which is why I sold him to you at the price I did. And so good luck with that. Joe Mixon also, he's going to have a couple hard weeks before his schedule lightens up. Um, but yeah, other than that, I think you have the workings of a good team, but again, they need to continue to show that they're a good team instead of just like Powell needs to get the work in the Jets offense. They keep feeding Forte. That's tough for your team. Um, I don't know. I feel like you have a lot of very good players on your team, talent-wise. They just might not be showing it exactly at the moment, for a number of different reasons. Like everyone on your team is super talented. Um, but hey, good luck to you, man. I like your team. We'll probably be talking extensively on Tuesday. Oh heck, I'm out of water. That's not gonna. My voice is gonna start going on me. So yeah, I'm just gonna end that with Nick. I like a lot of the players on your team, but they have rough schedules or personnel issues or injury issues and stuff like that. So best of luck to you, man. Uh, at 7th, we find Mike, who has slid back a little bit. Um, I mean, he started Tyrod Taylor on Thursday, so I mean, he's definitely going to be moving back up probably next week if the rest of his team follows suit. But I mean, I like his team a lot, with the exception of starting Randall Cobb and also starting both Indianapolis running backs. Everything else on this team, and this for the starters at least, I'm in love with. I'm like, wow, an Indianapolis starter as like a flex maybe. You got Kareem Hunt if you can say good. You got AJ Green. Witten's looking like he's young again. Man, those defensive players are pretty decent. Like, man, you got a lot of good stuff going. And then I keep looking, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see. You're starting Cobb this week because you have Antonio Brown on your bench. Sorry about that. That's my B. Um, that's definitely on me. So you put Antonio Brown in, and you have top two wide receivers, the number 1 running back, quarterback who has a terrible thing moving forward and just got another weapon. People who play in the future are terrible. He has a great schedule moving forward. That's what Tyrod Taylor has, a great schedule moving forward. And he just got another weapon. I mean, really the only thing you're missing is a number 2 running back. Um, and if you can figure out between Gore and Mack every week, then you have that. You also have Andre Ellington, who I legitimately think. I traded for him and then I dropped him because he ended up not playing well when Peterson got back because they had a bad game script and blah 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 blah. But regardless, I think Ellington's going to be good moving forward, and I really do think that this week is going to be a good week for Ellington. He's going to continue to do good things for you. And with that, I think you're going to have a really good team. It's just there's also the other side of it. You have the side of Mack and Gore cannibalizing each other. You have Tyrod Taylor, who, yeah, he's got this great schedule and everything, but if you watch the game, he really didn't play that well, and he just kind of picked it up in garbage time to make up all those points and get above 30. Kareem Hunt looks like he's slowing down a lot. I think it's starting to wear on him this longer season and playing a game every week with only one bye and all this stuff that you don't have in college. I think it's starting to bring him down. AJ Green has a person throwing the ball to him who I don't think is that good anymore. Andy Dalton just kind of looks like trash at the moment. Maybe he can turn it around, but I think the issue is he has a bad offensive line. People are getting in his face too much, and he's throwing the ball scared. He's more concerned about getting hit than he is about hitting his target. And I think that's something that's affecting AJ Green a lot. And yeah, he's still putting up the third best numbers in the league, but I still think it's nerve wracking if I'm you. You have Antonio Brown, who he's a lock, but then at your flex, you're running Cobb or the other Indianapolis guy, Ellington. If he comes out, I mean that'll be great, or maybe Amendola turns it around, but I don't know. You have a lot of question marks too. That's why you're at 7. I just wanted to make sure it was even because I praised your team, and I also want to make sure you know that your team is also kind of has a lot of negatives to it. Moving on, we have the A class. Now, you're probably noticing that there's a big gap there, and I think that is true. I think there's a big gap between Hush and Poison Ivy, and I think especially with Uma, and I think there's also a big gap between Mike and the next person, who is Doug. Doug's team just continues to look better and better. Russell Wilson has shown that he is just coming out to be phenomenal again this year. Like he just looks great after the bye, and I wish I held on to him instead of trading him 1-for-1 for Watson. Yes, that was a good trade for me, with the exception of the injury, but then I'd have him. He's got Lamar Miller and Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson at this point, I just give up. You win. You're a top 10 running back rest of season. I don't know what else to say. Lamar Miller, I think, is also, well, maybe not top 10. He's not in that top 8 class, but he's definitely top 15, we'll say. Lamar Miller, I think, is in that top 10 discussion, and like that, he wants to get in one of those 2 slots. Maybe try to slide up into that top 8 and take over Zeke's spot. And he could do that this week if he looks good. The issue is now he lost his quarterback, so they might start second in the box because Tom Savage is terrible. Which is why he's sitting at 6 and not higher. Again, I'm going to praise his team. I mean, you have, and then we get to your wide receivers. Your wide receivers are Nelson and Fitzgerald, 2 people who have very recently lost their quarterback and have garbage backups. It'll be very interesting to see this week what happens because they're on a bye last week. So maybe Jordy and Fitz go out. They play great, and they look great. And their quarterbacks had that bye week, and they really tuned themselves up, and they're looking like starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Not top 20 starting quarterbacks, but starting quarterbacks. And with this kind of talent, that's what you need. Who knows? Or they could go out there, both be trash. They put up 5 points a week for the rest of the season, and you're basically relying on Stefon Diggs when he comes back next week, and Devin Funchess as the number 2 receiving option in Carolina. Because let's be real, the number 1 is McCaffrey. I mean, your IDPs are fine. Your flexes, DeMarco Murray, who might be losing his job to Derrick Henry, and that might just end up cannibalizing itself. I don't know. The top end of your team, I really like. Your quarterback and your running backs, I really like. Even if Lamar Miller is questionable, which I think is just nonsense, and he just lost his quarterback, but I still like those top 3. And then everybody else on your team is just kind of like question marks. I mean, Stefon Diggs, who I don't even know who his quarterback's going to be next week when he comes out to play. On top of that, he only put up 6 points against Cleveland, who's absolutely trash garbage. Some offense, Malcolm. So yeah, I don't know. Your team's still putting up good points. You're still got a great record. You're one of the 4 people off the eliminator. So clearly you have a good team. I'm just worried about his longevity. And after this week, you're either going to plummet in the rankings or you're going to shoot up in the rankings. I don't think you're going to be 6 again next week. Moving on, we have James. James, I'm I'm bought in on Alex Smith at this point. Who knows? Um, but again, looking at the rest of your team, it yes, okay. Sorry, you have Le'Veon Bell, you have Alex Smith. Those are two absolutely fantastic players this year. I'm going to stop hating on Alex Smith, especially away from home. He tends to be a lot better than at home. Um, and then at home, Hunt is better. For some reason, they like to pass more when they're away from home and run more at home, which is like I think the opposite of what most teams think is going to happen. But I digress. Uh, so besides those two players, though, who do you have? Um, Josh Doxson, whose quarterback has no offensive line. ASJ, who's playing on a crap garbage team. Aguilar, who is a boom bust guy. I mean, he's got a lot. He's been doing a lot of booming, but he also can do some busting, as you saw last week. Devontae Adams, who again, the whole issue with is his quarterback even going to be? Is that quarterback even worth a roster spot at this point? Who knows? He did not look good the last couple times he played. And then you have Abdullah and Drake as your to play with your for your running back too. Um, I do think Drake is going to win the job, or at least he should win the job. But if he doesn't, or if that offensive line continues to not be that good, because you had the whole thing with the what's it called, the guard coming back. So hey, maybe they will be good, but I don't know, dude. Your team is a lot of question marks, so I moved you down a spot. But at the same time, I'm also looking at saying this could be a good team, or it could be a terrible team. This next week's going to tell a lot, and at that point, I'm going to make some decisions. I think a lot of people are going to be moving around because there was a lot of question marks coming into this week about a lot of players. So, moving on then. Matt S. You could be a tier higher at this point. You definitely could have been moved up a tier and put in those in like a top 4 group, but something was just holding me back a little bit. Something nagging at me, and I'm not entirely sure what it was. Um, so I'm sorry, but you have Dak, who is top 5 quarterback. You have Gurley, who looks absolutely insane. Hyde, who is he's running decent. I wouldn't say well. He's on a team that doesn't have an offensive right now. Now that they are trying to get Beathard out there and do stuff, and they also traded for a new quarterback. Who, if Garoppolo starts in 2 weeks after the bye, Hyde's going to look a lot better. But for now, he's kind of eh. And then you have like Benjamin Jones and Kelsey, and Tate. 2 years ago, that sounds like a great team. Now it's kind of like, well, Kelsey's boom or bust. Julio has noodle arm Matt Ryan throwing to him, and Kelvin Benjamin just got traded, so he has to learn a new offense and everything. Which it's not that hard as a wide receiver to learn an offense, but it's hard for the quarterback to learn your tendencies on routes, because say what you will about Kelvin Benjamin, fantastic athletic talent. He does not know how to run a route tree. You tell him to run a route, he will run in the vicinity of it, but he's not going to hit the marks. So if you're like, oh, he's this fast, so I'll just hit the route at this time in this spot, that's not going to work for Tyrod with Kelvin, because Kelvin is going to be all over the place with his routes. So good luck on that. But yeah, no, just looking at the rest of your team, it's very good. Again, I'm nitpicking on some of these players. Like Julio's a great talent. Kelsey's a great talent. Kelvin, I think, is going to be pretty good. Moving on. Hyde, if his offense starts to congeal a little bit, or behind Beathard after the bye, or behind Garoppolo after the bye, I think it's going to be great. But yeah, I think you have a really good team. It's just we got to see what's going to come of it. Moving on, we have the S class, and when it comes to Batman villains, your top class has to be the Joker. I'm sorry, I'm just partial to the Joker. I think he's absolutely fantastic. And we start off with Matt M, who is kind of a 2B. Like there's a 2A and a 2B to me this week, but I had to give somebody the third, so I gave it to Matt M because I'm playing him. I want him to feel a little bit bad about himself and maybe have to mess up a little bit. Who knows? Psychological warfare. Let's move on. And he has Carson Wentz, who is absolutely tearing it up at his quarterback position, and Ertz is doing great things too. I don't really know what else to say there. I doubted it early, and then I picked up Wentz, and then I traded Wentz away, and now wish I didn't. I made a lot of bad trades this season. Next week after the trade deadline, that's actually going to be my segment. I'm going to make a whole list of like just really lopsided trades, not just for myself, but just in general. Um, Hold me to that. But yeah, your team's very good. I mean, you have McKinnon, Ingram, and Darkwa, who are three players who should be very, very good rest of season at running back, with Williams, who in a PPR format I think is going to be very, very good. James White, Cohen, also PPR standouts. James and Crowder out for this week, so rip that dream. I feel like I don't know what to do with him at this point. In your wide receivers, the rest of them, like Alshon Jeffrey has caught less than half of his targets. That's a very bad conversion rate. On the other hand, if he starts converting 70% of them, that's a 20% increase, and suddenly he's going to start looking great. He plays Denver this week, so that's unlikely. Um, but hey, who knows? That I really like playing against somebody who has a Philadelphia stack, or really any team stack. Even Philadelphia's a very good offense, but I like somebody who has a stack who's playing against Denver. That makes me feel good. Um, but the rest of your team, like your team's very good. Um, so I don't know. I'm a little torn on this because I feel like you have a very good team. I just point out some flaws. Yes, but if you offered me your whole team for my whole team, I don't think I could say no. I just feel like you just have one of those fantastic. Now, naturally, I put myself at 12. I put you at 3. I'd probably switch with a lot of people's teams. But, you know, but no, I do really like your team. I think it's great. And you moved up a ton from last week. And I think you're going to have another big week this week. You're going to slaughter me, and you're going to continue sitting up in this top tier. So, you know, good on you, dude. As a 2A, we have Jerry. I do not see a hole in his team. Besides the obvious one staring at you with like a glowing, bright gaze of Jared Goff. But other than Goff, like the rest of your team is just really good. Like you have two of those top 8 running backs. You have two top 10 wide receivers. Yeah, I'm dropping Hopkins down because he has Savage throwing to him now, but I feel like Savage is going to be an upgrade on what he had thrown to him last season when he had that really bad season where it was like 30th or something in the league. And I think you're going to have him showing up week in and week out, putting up top 10 numbers still. He's not going to be the number one guy putting up 30 points a week or even 20 points a week, but I can see him putting out 100 and a touchdown most weeks. Because I think that Savage is a strict upgrade on Osweiler, at least for the way Osweiler was playing last season. Crabtree is going to continue to be great. I think Ted Ginn might, like, no offense to Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn some weeks looks like their number one receiver. I think Drew Brees has realized Ted Ginn's talent, and why he was drafted in the first round all those years ago by Miami to be a kick returner. Lore. But I think when you see a good corner up against Thomas and a really bad corner up against Ginn's the one who gets the targets right now. So I think that's a really smart pickup by him. I don't know how he acquired him, and putting him at the flex, I think is going to be also is going to work out really well for you. But yeah, I mean the rest of your team is really good. Forte, if he continues to just be that old dude who's doing great things for the Jets, I mean that could be a flex as well. I don't know. You got a really good team, dude, and you got Rip Deshaun. Love you, dude. Rest in peace. See you next season. Hopefully, if the pattern repeats, next season you'll lose the Super Bowl. The season after that you'll win the Super Bowl. So pencil it in. Houston Texans, 2019 Super Bowl or 2020 Super Bowl. It's February 2020, the Super Bowl that year. Champions, Houston Texans. The following season, he'll declare himself for the draft, play a great first half of the first season, and then get injured with a third ACL tear. I don't think he has the third ACL and I don't know who he'd get drafted by. Regardless, Jerry seems a beast, and of course that means that Tyler took over number one again. Um, God, your team is good. I mean, yeah, you have a bipocalypse this week, but just Jesus, dude, your team is just so sick. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You did good. You got there. You have three of those top eight guys in Howard, Gordon, and Fournette. So you start those three every week. You plug in Hill and Cooks. Uh, Kirk, yeah, he has got the offensive line issues, but there's no reason that you can't sell, a couple people to somebody, and get a really good quarterback. And I'm not talking any of those five guys of your skill positions, or top six guys, because you got Gronk too. Look at that. Cool. You have the number one defensive lineman. You have the number one defensive back. And you have Zach Brown, who is only fifth because he didn't start the season that hot, I don't think. So, yeah, you're back to being the best team. Good job, dude. You did it. If you survive this, no matter what happens this week, I think it's going to be hard for someone to beat you the rest of the season. This is your season to win. You can, claim the belt from me. But, again, you got this whole thing with your team where you still got to get there. So I think you will. You'll be fine. You moved up to the top spot. And that brings us to this week's matchups. As I said, I play Matt M this week with my hobbled team. The screenshot was taken before the my team was unhobbled. Was hobbled and then unhobbled with the trades and stuff. So the numbers are going to be a little bit weird, but this is who's playing who. Doug and Tyler is going to be a hot match, and it is actually the match of the week, which I'll get to in a second. But a lot of other really good matchups. Dave fighting for his life, basically, against Malcolm this week. The Bipocalypse, yeah, is hitting Tyler, but it's still going to be a good matchup, I think, with Doug. Matt S. and Mike are having a bit of a scrap over there. Matt S. trying to move himself even with Mike in the standings. They're in opposite conferences, so it doesn't matter. But everyone really counts. Same thing with James and Jess, opposite divisions, or opposite conferences, but still trying to close that gap. I don't think anyone has even a conference game this week, which is cool for everybody. But yeah, so best of luck to everybody this week in your non-conference matchups. And the game of the week, as I said, is Doug versus Tyler. So best of luck to those two, and I will see you all next week. God, that went forever. Sorry. Goodbye.